ready to start? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you so much for having me. I'm personally humbled that you would take the time to sit down with me. Just like who you are and what you mean to the community. I appreciate you. So
Thank you. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah, you want to give an introduction?
My name is Antonio Yanez Carrasco III. Um, my I'm the third generation regarding my father. I'm the third. My son is the fourth. Um, all my lineages come from pretty much northern Mexico, northern Texas. All of my grandparents, all my great grandparents, and then so I'm a son of farm workers. I'm a Chicano. Um, I'm a peyote practitioner, sun dancer, and I'm also a peace and dignity legacy runner. So and I'm a father of six, and then I'm a hard worker, and I provide for my family the best I can.
Yeah, there's a lot of broad scope things that you really do for the community. So it's hard to pick a place to start. I think a great place to start would be what's the legacy runner thing? That was an interesting story you were telling me earlier.
So there's a big from the very beginning. There's a prophecy of the eagle and the condor. So the eagle, the condor, it started with a bunch of you had the fifth son and then the sixth son. So there's if you go back from 1492, there's the way the prophecy goes with Cuauhtemoc is there's going to be 500 years of darkness, right? And then the 500 years of darkness. So all these elders got together in the early 80s in Quito, Ecuador, and these from North and South America. They said, how are we going to reunite the consciousness of our people from north and south and regenerate the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. So they said that we're going to have a run in 1992. So they started from Alaska, and then on May 1st, which is May Day, and also in Argentina at Tierra del Fuego, and then from that run in 1992, it ran at the same time from South America and from Alaska all the way down, and they met up in Teotihuacan on October 12th, 1992. Then that was the first run that happened. So, and a couple of years later, some of my elders, they got together and they're like, okay, I was a kid. So a bunch of my elders got together and say, how are we gonna do this run again? Because the run was only planned for 1 year, 1992. So my father wrote some grants, and some of my elders, so Gustavo Gutierrez and Tupac, they all got together and they said, how are we going to do this? And then in 1996, that's when I did it. So the first day, the same day I graduated high school, we went all the way up to Hazelton, British Columbia, and then to Alaska, almost to Alaska, and we ran all the way down to Guatemala. And we met up with the runners of the South. And then from there, my late elder, Francisco Melo, he was the main coordinator of the run from South America. So we all coordinated and we all ran. So it's a run that happens every 4 years, and it's happening right now.
So while you were running south, they were running north.
Exactly.
And you passed each other in the middle?
Yeah, we coordinate, and then in Teotihuacan at that time. So now each run is different. It happens every 4 years. Every 4 years. So the only time it hasn't happened was during COVID, but all the main staffs were here at the house. Actually, we had all the runners with the main staffs here in my front yard, and we ran and we had a ceremony with them. So all the elders, they all know me. So in regards to being a legacy runner, because this is 1996, before the internet, before coordinating and what have you.
It's all word of mouth and introductions,
handshakes. And when I was a kid, it was pretty much my father was one of the ones who wrote the grants and helped coordinate. And so all the meetings there in Phoenix at the time, everybody came from North and South America, and they all coordinated in Phoenix, and all the main coordinators, the regional coordinators, were staying at my house. So they all got to know me. So it wasn't they're asking me, are you going to run? It was mostly, you're going to run. Like that was just the way it is.
Yeah.
Like
so did you train for it, or you were
I mean, I'm not that big of a runner per se.
Because 20 miles a day for 7 months is intense.
Yeah. After a while, you start building up a strength, momentum, and then in Phoenix, I graduated high school in Phoenix, so like you run a couple of miles here, a couple of miles there, and what have you. And then when you're with the run and you're running with the staff in the middle of the highway in British Columbia, and then you're going up a hill and wind's pushing up against you, and if people are relying on you, then you learn how to run pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I would be able to make it today. Maybe a younger version myself.
Younger version. It's a lot of discipline, and it's happening right now. And then those of you who are listening, if you want to go ahead, I'm pretty sure that I think the runners right now are barely getting into southern British Columbia. The run is going to go through. I think I have the dates on my phone. It's going to run through California. And then it's going to be another runners that are going to go through the Fort Mojave Reservation, through Phoenix, and then from there they're going to go all the way down to, I think this run here this year is going to go all the way down. They're going to coordinate in Quito, Ecuador, because before it was Teotihuacan, Mexico, which is 40 miles north of Mexico City. And then little they started going to like Panama, then in Guatemala, and then now they're going to go all the way down. The northern runners are going to go all the way down to Quito, Ecuador.
So how many miles altogether? That's like a few hundred, right? 2,000?
Yeah, I mean, they average around 200 or 300 miles a day. It depends, because you might go to one reservation where one reservation is only like about 30, 40 miles away. So all the runners they run that way. So it's like a leapfrog run, relay.
How do bathroom breaks work? You're just going while you're running.
Well, it just depends. It just depends, because you have a lot of sisters that are on their moon cycle.
Oh yeah.
And then they're wearing dresses and what have you. So it just depends, like on the side of the highway, because a lot of times you're in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So it's you learn how to respect people's privacy.
And you eat when you run and all that.
No. Well, when you're running, we circle up in the morning, burn sage, burn cedar, introduce ourselves, welcome the new runners, and then the staffs, who's going to run with what staff. And then while we're running, at the end of the day, we circle up, and then it's always a host nation. So the coordinating is very important. Who's going to host us? And then the host community are the ones who feed the runners. So you might go like Canada and the United States. Some of their tribes, it depends on how connected they are with traditions. Sometimes they might go to casinos or a banquet hall or what have you. Sometimes it might be at a boys club, at the barrio or something during the hood. It might be you might running through the Central Coast, and you might be camping out in a campground. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes you go to Mexico and then they have like a big old pot of beans and rice, and then you're feeding a bunch of people. And then sometimes you might go like 7 or 8 days without taking a shower, because you go to some towns in Mexico or down south where they don't have water, and then you're asking the community to host people, but they don't even have water for them.
Yeah.
So you learn how to navigate that, and how to like, okay, we're here to bring service and community to you, not take from you.
The two running groups represent the eagle and the condor.
Yeah, the eagle of the north and the condor of the south.
So that would be almost like the union between northern tribes and southern tribes.
Exactly. And then so that's why it's really, really important, because you're bringing both together. And then when you're bringing both together, you're educating a lot of natives that we share the same issues, whether it's boarding schools, whether it's haciendas, whether it's plantations, whether it's pipelines, whether it's language barriers, financial reasons, everything. And then even now a big wave length, the big educational system right now is going through of connecting, and educating a lot of people from Mexico or from down south that we are natives, and educating people from up north that there's natives that look like them, that live in the south, that might wash your dishes at a restaurant, that might pick your food, and then we're over here. So you're making that bridge. So I'm a legacy runner from 1996.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That's one of my big goals for this podcast, is to provide that type of education. We didn't create these borders. These borders were made by the colonizers. It was made by the Spanish. It was made by the French. It was made by the British. None of that existed. Nobody talked to us. They just came and claimed the land and separated our people. They even separated our people within America by making us break up into and establish tribes and register rancherias and tribes, and then create this intertribal kind of thing where we're all fighting for the same resources.
Exactly.
We're all fighting for the same pool of small grants to be able to just build housing or infrastructure, or develop water. If we unite together as a people, then we could have more control.
Exactly.
And so yeah, legacy runner. You talked a lot about your father. It sounds like he did a lot for the community.
Yeah. So those of you who are listening, my first teacher, number one, is my mother. She's my first teacher. So you get to balance it out, obviously. My father was his name was Antonio Medrano Carrasco. There's a couple of pictures of him here. He was one of the pioneers of California and New Mexico of activism of Chicanos, being that he founded a small clinic in rural New Mexico. He founded a couple clinics in El Paso. He was the one who, in the early '80s when he was the one at the protests and the marches, beating a hand drum at marches. He was the one that was fighting and organizing several behind the scenes activities. For example, do you want to hear a story of my father in 1976?
Yeah.
So my I was like in the 4th, 5th grade, and my sister and I were living in El Paso with my dad in the summertime. And then, like any of those, if you're listening, who are activists, there's a lot of trials and tribulations. A lot of you end up at a protest, and you're over there leading the charge, and you look behind, and just nobody's behind you anymore. That was my father. So, and then at that point in time, he got drunk and he was drinking, and then and he was crying, and he was saying in Spanish, and with his slight stutter, and he was just saying that he died. And then my sister and I were kind of complex, and we're thinking about who died, what's going on here. And then finally my father brought out some newspaper articles from 1976, the New York Times, LA Times, before the internet, and he showed us a newspaper clipping that was 12 years old at the time, and it was a picture of him and his name, and it says 3 Americans killed by CIA death squad in Chile. And then in Chile, right? And this is the time of Pinochet, the revolution, right? And then so in the Civil War, so my sister and I were kind of complex, and we're like, how is my dad's picture on this newspaper? And then my dad gave us the story that when my mom was pregnant of my older sister, who's a year older than me, my dad went to Chile and went to the indigenous communities in Chile and helped them organize the revolution, the guerrilla warfare, the freedom fighters. And then finally, when someone informed my father, hey, Antonio, your name's on a list. The CIA is looking for you. So he left his passport with a certain individual. And he went through the back lines. He went to the U.S. Embassy. A few months later, he was drinking with his coffee like he did every morning, and he saw his picture, and then that person died. So
they falsely killed someone thinking it was him.
With my father.
My gosh.
So that kind of gives you a deep realm of who my father was.
Right. That's powerful. It was the activism back in that day was a lot more foot on the ground.
Yes.
Really making things happen. My grandfather, he went to Wounded Knee and Broken Rock, and he loaded up a trailer with guns, and they went down there and they supported the natives.
Yeah.
That type of activism is not the same as today. Today, this is the activism.
Yes, exactly.
And that was what he left with us, was the most powerful tool that natives have is media. That's what's really going to make a change.
Yes.
And he actually ended up passing away through a car accident.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But we think there's something tricky about the car accident,
Yeah, there's this. I asked my mother, I'm like, Mom, was this correct that because the timeline doesn't match up, And then I asked my mom, like, was my dad there? And then when you're pregnant of my sister Lupe, and my mom gave me this. Your dad went to get milk one day, and he was gone for 6 months. he came back different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like a different realm of activism, and then through social media now, and then it's just about back in the day. It's about rolling up your sleeves, doing the work, and it might be having an FBI file, it might be having watch list somewhere. That's just the way things were.
Well, yeah, the media is even today, the mainstream media is controlled by the elite and different organizations and corporations that have commercial interests. And so they're not going to post anything that's going to take away from their advertisers or get them in trouble with whatever FBI agent is overseeing that specific news station. And so before the internet, if you're going to them and you're trying to get stuff in the newspaper, the producer's just going to smack it aside. Like, we're not going to put that together. What are you talking about? But now there's no stopping it. When you put that on social media and it's out there, there's no one that can stop you from. Yeah.
That's my father. He was the one. There's a couple of activism stories. For example, he would in Phoenix or in El Paso, he would walk, like, okay, so now the whole thing's going on with Palestine, right? Palestine. So we used to live really close to the border in El Paso and Segundo Barrio and El Paso, and then so what happens is that a lot of Mexicans, they have day passes, so they come from Mexico, from Juarez, and they go across the border into El Paso, and then they sleep in cardboard boxes, and they're waiting for work to pick hats in New Mexico. So a school bus might come in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, and they handpick the Mexicans to work in the fields. And it's like only for one day. So a lot of the rich landowners who were in New Mexico, they would go with razor blades, and then the Mexicans would put their hands out like that, and then the ranch hands or what have you, they would cut the fingertips of the Mexicans, and whoever had the thickest callus will be chosen to go on the bus to go work that day.
That's wild.
Yeah. So when you have a bunch of Mexicans lined up, then it's easy pickings for all these U.S. soldiers from Fort Bliss when they go drinking in Juarez and they come across the border all drunk and belligerent. They start picking fights with Mexicans, right? And then the policemen, they're there, they don't protect the Mexicans. So my father, he would go literally in the middle of the night with his hand drum, with his Palestinian, Yasser Arafat attire, and then all wrapped up with his hand drum, and he would protect these Mexicans from getting beat up by these U.S. soldiers, but drunk and belligerent, because the police wouldn't protect them.
Well, how long ago was this?
This is like around the early '80s, because I was like around 4 or 5, like fourth or fifth grade, and then sometimes, because I was living with my dad, sometimes he wouldn't even come home. I'm like, "What's going on, Dad?" And like, he goes, "Oh no, the cops arrested me." I'm like, "What did you do?" He said, "Well, this new soldier was being this Mexican. I jumped in, and they arrested me too." So I was like, "What?"
So what was the purpose behind the Palestinian?
Because he was mostly, like, at that time, the Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians and Mexicans, the whole, like, being belittled. So I tell that story because it's kind of going full circle now, in the sense of, like,
Palestine's coming back around.
Yeah, it's coming back around. So
it's because it's been an issue since the 40s.
Yeah, exactly. But it was, a lot of times, it was the whole people weren't really educated, and so now my father, he was there at that time, fighting for Palestine in the early '80s, like literally getting beat up.
Dang, he's ahead of his time.
way
ahead of his time.
Yeah. So that I grew up with the activism plus with the ceremony, with ceremony inside, and then so that's to answer your question about my father.
Yeah.
And then my mother was the backbone.
Was she the one that was more ceremonial?
My mother was.
Your father was the.
But my kind of going into the whole backstory. My parents were separated before I was born. right? But they always loved each other. They always cared for each other. They never spoke ill of each other. They never they never kept us from each other at all. So I had access to my father whenever I wanted to. Go live with dad. Go live with your dad. And so my mom was mostly the single mom holding it down while cleaning homes. We're on welfare, um, food stamps. We were on Section 8, working at Pick and Save, working at McDonald's. So her whole priority was, I want the best for my kids. So she bought a home in the early 80s, and then she bought another house. And so her whole thing, even though she's also from Texas, she was born in Big Springs, Texas, Cahuiteco, but her whole thing and her whole focus now was ceremony, a ceremony of life, like to help my kids. Now her story goes even deeper than that, because both of my parents, before they even met each other, both worked in the fields. They both picked cotton, and both of them met each other in New Mexico. But both of them, prior to that, had family and ties to California. So my mother, through the whole like cultural genocide. So my grandmother, my mom's mother, she was born in Valentine, Texas, but she was super super dark, and at that time, Mexicans weren't allowed to go to school, so they ended up working in the fields. So my mother, but they were living in Salinas, working in the fields. When my mom was 5 years old, and then my grandfather kidnapped my mother, my two older uncles, and my two younger tias, and they kidnapped them. Grandfather kidnapped them and took them all to Chihuahua, to Mexico. And then from there, my mother was placed in adoption homes, the foster homes. Horrible things happened to her via the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And then they all worked in the fields. They went to go pick cherries in Utah and Kansas and Nebraska. And then so my mom never had a mom, And then my grandfather was 39 years old, and he married a 14-year-old. Then my mom was 9 when her stepmom was 14, so she never really had a father. She never really had a mother. So when she got with my father, my father is the one who taught her how to cook, how to sew, how to be a wife. So there's a lot of emphasis on my father regarding ceremonies and activism, but everything that happened through my mother when she was a kid, she didn't finally meet her mom, her biological mom, until she was in her early 20s. And then my grandmother was living in Salinas, so my mom met her half brothers and half sisters, and they were all like gangsters. They're all norteños from Salas, and then so we would go visit my uncles in Folsom Prison, and what have you. And then if you were to ask my mother, which I asked her, the best thing that ever happened to her was that my grandfather kidnapped her and took him and took him to New Mexico.
Because then she would be involved in that gang culture.
In the gang culture. So even though my mom wasn't quote unquote in ceremony like my dad or activism like my dad, but she was the core. She was the core, and the message that like her message is when I asked her when you ask her, like, how did you go about this without a husband, without a mom, without a father, without a community, without ceremonies, without nothing, being sexually assaulted when you're a kid by several adult men via the church. And her response is, you have to forgive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That her story is one that is very common amongst Native women, and that's the type of stories that we need to tell more.
Yeah.
It's something that people don't like to talk about, which is understandable. It's something that people don't want to hear, which is also understandable. But it's important for the healing of our culture, because this happened to so many of us, many of us, especially via the church and all these different schools, the boarding schools. A lot of women were taken advantage of. My last podcast with Dr. Sean Milanovich, he talked about a story that happened with his aunt, and it was very similar. And it's hard. And thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
So ceremonies, your dad was leading the ceremonies.
Exactly. So it's the same.
That was before the Native American Church was a thing, or he was a part of the Native American Church?
Well, there's a backstory behind that, because if you there's a story of it's very. So my father didn't start getting into peyote until later, into later in life. He just started going to Sundance into later in life. But at the same time, he was totally ingrained from being as a kid, like you're native, you're Chicano, you're Cahuiteco, you're Chicanindio, right? And then one of the main stories that like, young Christ, one of the focal points of my father's what ingrained in him was that my grandmother, my dad's mother, her name was Guadalupe, and she was a hardcore Catholic, right? But then again, her trials, she always battled with. I never met her. She passed away in '73. I was born in '77. But what the stories that my father told me and my other relatives, my aunts and uncles, they all is that the battle of her being native, but and also being Catholic, you know. So what happened was that my father in 1973, he had a full-ride scholarship to UC Berkeley, and he was 18 years old, living in Fresno, picking grapes. He went to Berkeley for 2 or 3 weeks, and then during Labor Day, he came down to Fresno to visit the family. So my grandmother told my father, you know what, I'm gonna go take a nap. I want you to wake me up in half an hour. And he's okay. So he went to her room a half an hour later, and beknownst to him, and, he found her, and she tied her legs with a red ribbon, representing native blood. She tied her arms with a red ribbon, native. Then she put 12 silver dollar coins for her 12 kids,
Mm-hmm.
with the eagle facing up, right, and her Catholic rosary. And she passed away like that, and he found her like that, So the bloodlines of being native in the family was like deeply entrenched, but also
So same with the church.
same with the church.
Mm-hmm. What's your feeling about that specifically?
The
I feel
church?
like there's a lot of controversy
Uh, um,
because it seems like the Catholic Church kind of
mhm,
forced it down our indigenous
mhm,
throats,
mhm.
proverbially.
It- it- if I have a deep um if you step back and take away the pain, the bias, what happened to my mother, my father was a my father was a altar boy. One of my tias, my late tia Flore, my late tia Mamie was a nun, and she was never allowed even in the church
Mm-hmm.
to stand in the church in Kansas. Um, so if you take away all the bias, if you take away all the pain, if you take away not just the Catholic Church, but even the Christian Church, the Mormon Church, any church, um, I asked one of my elders one time, my Huichol elders, I asked him, "What do you think about the church?" And then and his answer was very very simple, and he told me in Spanish. He's en la iglesia no hay nada mal, es la gente que traje la iglesia. So the church, there's nothing wrong with the church. It's the people who brought the church.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what a lot of elders say. The same
Yeah,
thing. Who grew up in that Catholic.
yeah.
So you study both. You do both
Well,
Catholic.
but I don't really like. I acknowledge it. Like I had the cross here. I had the Guadalupe, and I. It'll be wrong of me not to pay homage to the way that my grandmothers prayed,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they connected to Creator.
So do you feel as if to be able to connect with your ancestors who are connected to
Uh,
God through the Catholic Church, you have to pray and speak to that specific in that form,
uh,
or do you feel like you can reach out to them
well,
through the indigenous version of the Creator?
if you even break it down for me, just my own thoughts, the way medicine taught me was that Creator's everywhere, right? So if you break it down even to the most universal, the most simplest terms in regards to, okay, what is the cross? What's the four directions? You
Mm-hmm.
know, okay, what is, I don't read the Bible all the time, obviously, because I'm not that guy, but I do acknowledge in the sense that there's true stories in there that are written by a man, obviously, because we all have our own interpretations of men and what have you. So, but the bottom line is like, thou shalt not kill,
Mm-hmm.
thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt, you know, the commandments in the sense of like loathing and lust and the Ten Commandments and so if there's but those are universal teachings. So if you break it down, not just Catholicism or Christianity, but any religion in the world, the fundamentals are the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so one of my elders told me, he goes, all of our traditions are the same. You know, we all pray to Creator. You know, the only thing that defines us culturally is through migration routes, the weather, you know, the topography of what we eat and who we pay homage to. You know, and that's the only thing that separates us. And so, as a native community, South or North America, you know, we are the same. Traditionally, we're the same. The only difference is the topography, the weather, the climate, what animals we hunt, what have you, what kind of corn or squash, what do we eat, you know. But traditionally, we're the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you break that down in the root of Christianity or any other religious background, it is the same. So I try to keep it very simple in that regard. Don't complicate things.
I have a similar understanding about God,
Mm.
where I feel like God is everything, God is all.
Yeah.
And I grew up Christian, so
Mhm.
I hold the values, and I see the
Mm.
same thing within spirituality. And you're meditating, and you
Mhm.
come upon, you may interpret it different than it's described in the Bible,
Exactly.
but in the root of it, the way you believe and carry yourself as
Mhm.
far as morally, it is very similar.
Yes.
Yeah. It's when you start trying to define things with hard lines is when you
Yeah,
start
yeah.
running into issues. Yeah.
But hard lines, whether you're native of around the whole world, you know, when people start doing like, there's certain things that are black and white. I get that, and some things are just gray. You know, we're just like, you know what, we're all human. We all want our children to be around ceremonies. We all want children to be to identify who we are, you know, and to be proud of who we are. But that doesn't mean that I have to step on someone's cultural beliefs, just so I can feel better about
Mhm.
myself. You know, we're human.
Yeah. The other main difference is, though, in the way in which we practice ceremonially.
Mhm.
Like if you're Christian or Catholic, you're gonna go to the church, and you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
different ceremonies depending on your faction.
Uh-huh.
That in your church you do different things,
Yeah.
right? And then depending on where you are in the indigenous culture,
Mhm.
you're gonna have different ceremonies. A lot of people from southern tribes, they take part in temescals, where
Yeah.
you're not necessarily doing temescals up north.
Uh,
I mean, some people have adopted it because it is very healthy for you,
Yeah.
and it is like, I like it. I finally did one, and it was
okay,
nice.
okay.
Yeah.
Swat Lodge or Temascal?
I did a temescal.
Oh, okay.
And then, the Plains natives, you guys do peyote ceremonies, right? And so,
Yeah. So it all depends on those who are listening. Going back to the hard line, right? So there's traditional ceremonies where like you're traditional, meaning like behind the scenes, inner circle, generational lineage. You know, like you don't talk about things like that. It's straight up traditional ceremonies. You know, and then there's things that you could talk about, right? So it's there's different layers and different levels, right? So if you were to talk to these old school elders who don't know how to read or write and what have you, they don't own a phone or what have you, then they're not going to release this information to you because it's old school traditional medicine, right? And then you could talk about other stuff, you know, about coming together with humanity and unity and cultural, our similarities. So it depends on where the conversation's at and with who.
right.
So that's the wiggle. That's the middle ground, you know. So when you're talking about like the hard lines, there is a hard line in that regard, but that's very inner circle, very like generational secrets. You know?
Okay, yeah, I definitely understand.
Yeah.
As far as how deep the conversation
Yes,
goes,
yeah.
and so surrounding that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm more so specifically because we're in context with the Native American church.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about the Catholic side.
Uh,
I wanted to get into the Native side and how that works as far as being able to practice these
okay.
ceremonies. And
So if you break it down, there's a big there's a lot of education that's going on right now because in myself, if you not only study history but study there's a big, pretty much everybody north of Mexico City, whether they're Otomi, whether you're Yaqui, Mayo, Cora, Huichol, Tujaramara, um, Loramuri, all these different Yaquis, one way or another, we utilized, and peyote was part of our holy sacrament, right? So there's if you put that into context, there's like a whole wave, right? And then especially like in South Texas right now with the Cahuitecos and the Panapache and what have you. So now the use in the late 1800s, early 1900s, through the legalization of Corner Parker and the Native American Church, how it went up north to Oklahoma. Okay, so you could get into historical dates and this and that and vice versa, but the moral of the story for me, from my point of view, is that this peyote found its way, this holy medicine found its way up north to be utilized to spread unity through intertribal connections, right? So if you were to backtrack and then be the fly in the wall or what have you, going back 130, 140 years ago, when this medicine, even prior to Corner Parker, when this medicine went to a native community, I'm pretty sure whether it's CPQ, Arizona, or White River, or wherever it might be, somewhere there in Oklahoma, where this medicine, this peyote, came to a community, and he had all these elders around around the circle, and they're contemplating, and they're like kind of like figuring out, like, well, this is really good medicine. This is a shimmering heart medicine. This is medicine that brings us together. How are we going to utilize this medicine, but still honoring our native traditions, our traditional native traditions? So like, how are we going to use this medicine? So from there, every tribe, especially in Oklahoma, when they got after the Indian territories and they all went back to the reservations and what have you, they all went back and they brought this peyote with them to other communities. So from there, it kind of got branched out. So you might have like a Pawnee, Ponca, the Nez Perce, you might have the Arapaho, the Lakota, the Nakota. You might have different variations of how to use this medicine. But it all comes back to elders coming together and saying, wait a minute, we still have our traditional ceremonies. So it might be, for example, like a Quanah Parker's fireplace, which my uncle has that fireplace. You don't put nothing in the fire. You don't even put smokes in the fire. The only thing that goes in the fire is cedar. All the smokes in the morning, that goes outside. You don't feed the fire. You don't feed the fire food. You don't feed the fire chocolate. You don't feed the fire nothing, right? But you might go to other communities, right? Like my compadre Jose Luis, where their ceremonial and their traditional practices is that they have cremations when people pass away. Where when they pass away, they put their whole body and they have a big fire and they cremate the whole body. And then when people come together around the circle, they might get your penalty blanket, your necklace, your eagle feather, and you put that in the fire, right? Along with that person. That person's going to go in the spirit world in the fire. So they put everything in the fire, even their own relatives.
That's amazing.
Right? So when you come into a peyote ceremony and say, oh, you can't put that in the fire, but you're on their native territory. So in their native territory and their own native beliefs, everything goes in the fire. Even we go in the fire. So how cannot we put this tobacco in the fire? So it depends the variations of where you're at, how medicine peyote came in their community, and how the elders intertwined it. That's where it varies.
And you have to be a part of the church to be able to legally do this in America, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm a legal peyote practitioner. So people could come to ceremonies, and that's where like the legalization right now, where it comes into play, because you might have.
Do you have to be registered to a tribe to be able to,
Well,
or how does you get?
it depends because there's the Native American church in general, right? And I understand and I totally agree in the regarding of the legalization because it should be legal. It should have legal ties to it,
Mm-hmm.
where everything it should be. Even though unfortunately, we all of us don't like the government, right? But in that sense, is that the guard takers
We're protected.
protected. It should be protected. It shouldn't be a free for all, what have you, right? So so a lot of times right now, what people are doing, they're starting their own 501c3s, their own doing it, and they're using the protection of the Native American church, to do other stuff like regular recreational drugs, marijuana, mushrooms, which
Ayahuasca.
that has no business in the Native American church.
That's the new age
That
spirituality.
new spirit, that has no business in the Native American church, but to put stipulations and saying you could only be part of a enrolled federal tribe, or you could only be part of a enrolled state tribe, right? And then I agree with that, to a point, okay. But in the instance, like for myself, we're here in California, okay. My parents worked in the fields, literally, right? So, are my parents like we're native, but were we enrolled in a tribe? No,
A lot of southern tribes don't federally exist.
it didn't exist, especially in
Yeah.
California. And then so kind of giving you a little brief history. There's a going back. Why are we in California? Why are we over here? Why are my parents come over here? Right. So in the early 1900s, whether it's the Salt Wars, they have literally wars with the Texas Rangers, where Mexicans they kidnapped and they arrested 18 Texas Rangers and they imprisoned them.
No shit.
Yeah, in El
Oh
Paso,
man.
Texas, right? Or 30 or 40 miles from where my grandparents are from Pecos, Texas, they call it La Matancia. So in the early 1900s, you had Texas Rangers coming over here, right? And they were hanging Mexicans.
Mm.
And then so even if you break that down even deeper, because you have the Cahuitecos, you have the natives and what have you, and then so the only way they could get land from Mexico when it was part of Mexico is that you have to be registered, quote unquote, as a Mexican, not a native. So when I refer to Texas Mexicans, Tejanos, you're like, okay, wait a minute, where's the brink here? How does it come together? Natives and Mexicans in Texas. So the only way to get benefits or to get your birth certificate or what have you, you had to be marked as a Mexican because you're a part of the Mexican government at the time, even though you were a native,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when the Texas Rangers came in, they hung a bunch of Mexicans, and then even there's a massacres that happened. So to all the Gatling guns and what have you. So a bunch of like this happened really close to where my grandparents were born. They all went either to southern New Mexico by Carlsbad and Roswell and what have you, or some of them actually left and went to California.
Mm.
So how does that link up to being state recognized or being federally recognized?
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't add up. The math does not add up. So when you put that stipulation and say, okay, you know what, you can only be part of this Native American church if your state are federally recognized, then wait a minute, the math does not add
They
up.
use those same laws to steal land from natives because
Exactly.
we weren't technically American, so we couldn't claim the lands outside of the reservation.
Mhm.
And if we didn't divvy up the lands to plots and give each native a specific plot, then they would allow people who were American to come and just settle on those lands. So the laws that they use to murder, get natives to register as Mexican are the same laws they use to steal land from from natives.
Correct.
So that's they did a lot of shady, messed up stuff to our people.
So if you break it down to the Native American church, it should be legal. It should be controlled. Number one, and then it should be. I really do believe that it should be case by case regarding if you're not federally recognized, if you're not state recognized.
If someone sponsors you.
If someone sponsors, and in my case, it was sponsored by elders. Mm-hmm. It was sponsored by documentation. Okay, you know what? So I had literally had to sit down with literally face to face sit down with DEA agents, and say, okay, who are you? You got so, and they knocked on the doors of my elders in South Texas and say,
Mm.
knocked on their doors and what have you, Fish and Wildlife for Migratory Bird Act and what have you. Okay, who are your sponsors? And then that's even doing some of the laws, the Fiscal Court of Appeals, the federal laws say, okay,
So migratory bird act, meaning like that's surrounding you can't have eagle feathers unless you're Native American, right?
yeah. So before 19, I think it's like 2012, before it was only federally recognized tribal members, enrolled federally member tribal members, right? And then a couple of elders got, their feathers were confiscated from them to Pond Apache and went up to the Fiscal Court of Appeals. Then now the law changes where it could be state, if you're state recognized, okay? And then so if you're state
Like
recognized,
rancherias and things
yeah,
like that.
rancherias, or even like, especially in Texas or other states, like Arizona, the majority of them are federally recognized, but you might have for example, like here in California, San Fernando Valley, the Tongva, or what have you, they're state recognized, but they don't have reservations, right? So they're not they're only state recognized, they're not federally recognized. So the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals says that, you know what, if you're a Native American from a state recognized tribe, then you could have birds of migratory bird act. Then you could, that falls under the umbrella of that, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, where my feathers, and I've had my house raided by the FBI, by the Fish and Wildlife. I've had my feathers confiscated. I've fought for them.
Man.
I fought for them. I have elders writing me letters, sponsor me, and then so like I know how it is to have me and my kids at gunpoint.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So the FBI and the DEA came in. They kicked your door down.
Everything,
They held you at gunpoint.
Yeah, everything.
SWAT team, basically, and they.
And then so I fought for them. So and I kind of.
How did that happen? They just knew you were doing ceremonies, or
yeah. What? But it's a very, if you take the bias out of it, like literally the bias out of it, right, and say coming from an officer's point of view, because you have to look at different point of views. Is you have this guy, he's light complected, he's in California, he's running peyote ceremonies. What's going on here? We're going to investigate, see what's going on. And the only way to investigate is to get a search warrant. When we get a search warrant, come to my house. So even though I don't agree with that, because I don't agree with it, but I understand that, because you have to come from a non-biased point of view. Because what happens now is that you have a bunch of new agers, who are doing ayahuasca ceremonies, or doing mushroom ceremonies, or doing all these other,
and they're mixing them all at once.
They're mixing all of them, and they're calling themselves the Native American Church, and they're doing this and all kinds of stuff, and then so and they have all these feathers and what have you. So it's like, okay, I understand it.
I feel like a lot of time with those new agers too, it's people who aren't even necessarily indigenous. They just happen to go down to Costa Rica and participate in a ceremony, and then they had an incredible experience, so they stay down there for a few months and they learned a little bit, and now they're trying to bring it back here and do it like, oh, there's not enough out here going on. I need to bring enlightenment to people, which is a good idea, but at the same time, it should be reserved for those who.
Oh, extremely, and especially even like birds, because now you have a whole thing now where which I get it. I totally understand in the sense of you have people who come around for a couple of years and they kind of, it's just a chapter in their life ceremonies. It's just a chapter in their lives, and then before you know it, they start acquiring scissor tails, anhinga water birds. These are eagle feathers. And then it's like these are sacred birds, and then they have them hanging like as a museum in their house, and they don't utilize these instruments. They're not going to ceremonies. They're not passing them down they're not bringing their children. Maybe they go back to smoking weed or going back to drinking. This is a chapter in their lives. So it's
a fun story for their memoirs.
That's it. So you have all these, and so I understand the fish and wildlife. Their point of view is like, we should minimize, because these birds are sacred. and people are buying and selling these feathers, which they shouldn't.
And yeah, that creates a market for poachers to
Exactly.
come. And when a lot of us, these have been passed down for generations,
Yes.
or someone was lucky enough to find one in the wild while they're out. We're not just going around killing eagles and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
and then there's the whole thing about the depository in Colorado, because only federally recognized natives, you have to fill out an application to get birds from the depository in Colorado. But that excludes state recognized natives. That's only for federally recognized natives.
Yeah, our tribe we have 2 condors, and we're gonna acquire a 3rd condor.
Okay.
But a lot of our land that we oversee is it's the redwoods up north,
Okay.
and so as we're trying to reintroduce condors into America and bring back the population. That's one of our activism things that we're doing to preserve wildlife. We have a lot of endangered species on our lands that we take care of.
Yeah, there's like a whole new wave of new agers, and it's really good that you're making this podcast, because you're educating people. It's like, if you want to know about Native traditions, if you want to know about peyote, if you want to know about like our culture, the best thing is to leave it alone. To leave it alone in the sense of, if you're not really serious, and if you're just a tourist in ceremonies, then maybe subscribe to your channel, maybe push a like, or maybe you could donate to you have better resources, so you can spread the word better, or what have you. But but in regards to just because it's something, it's like a new toy for you, and new, just leave it alone.
I feel like if it's meant for you, it'll present itself. It'll come to you. It'll be natural. And the other important thing is to understand that it's a commitment.
Extremely.
It's not something that you just pick up and do. It's not like you're having fun with your buddies at the beach and you ate a couple mushrooms. That's not what any of this is.
No.
Yeah. It's something that you're committing your entire life to. It becomes a part of your culture. It becomes the way that you walk and carry your life and your practice. It's like when people, even with like Catholics or Christians, who are devout, they're going to go to church every Sunday, and they're going to pray. They're going to pray over their food, every one of their meals. They're going to pray over it. And that's the type of level of commitment that people who truly practice these ways of life are bringing Native ceremonies into their life. Like even before we started, we saged the room, and I was burning copal, and it, like, for even the small things, that's the way that I feel like we should be practicing our Native ways. Yeah.
There's a big right now. I like to use a metaphor of being a Walmart greeter, meaning that are you a host or are you a guest? Okay, so most of us who in life, obviously, we don't, whether you're going to school, whether you're doing this, or with relationships and starting a family, but are you going to be a host or are you going to be a guest? Because if you're always a guest in the community, you're not establishing roots. You're not really, you're just a guest to a community. You're just there for a brief moment in time. You're just passing by. But are you going to be hosting something? Are you going to be that Walmart greeter? Because when you're a host to something, to a community, that means that you have established roots in that community. You have elders. You have elders who did. If you stray off the beaten path, you're gonna have elders that are gonna pull your ear and bring you to the side and scold you in front of everybody. You're gonna have your mom and dad around. You're gonna have those children around. You're an investor in a community. So and then during this podcast, and the really important thing is that when people come into these ceremonies, you have to ask yourself, after the whole honeymoon thing, after the glare and stuff, after the inner politics and who's with who and who did what, blah blah blah, like, are you a host or are you a guest?
I feel like my ancestors too pulled me by the ear, not just my elders. They'll knock me back into a path if I start straying too far away. They'll have life coming and smack me up a little bit and be like, "No, you're going the wrong way."
Yeah. I see. No.
Yeah.
Así no. And then so that's a very for us to bring communities together. Then that means there's like a whole wave of youngsters building families. You know, going to school, getting your education, going to trade school. You know, whether it's and then what happens to a lot of Chicano culture is, you know, especially grew up in the '90s. It was mostly like, you know, I don't ditching school, going to prison, being gang affiliated. You know, I'm down because I'm a gangster. I'm down because I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and but you're just when you get older, you're creating that all that trauma. And you're just carrying it with you. Like I have a lot of cousins of mine who are in prison. I have a cousin of mine, my cousin David. He's been down 19 years. He's a month younger than me. You know, why? Because he was a heroin addict. Why? Because he was robbing stores, right? And he's been to ceremonies with me. And I have another cousin who shot in drive-bys, you know. But that comes from that comes from that generational trauma of my mom broke that cycle.
Hmm.
She broke that cycle. You know, my other aunts and uncles, they're still stuck in that cycle. They haven't learned to forgive. So going to school is cool. You know, buying a home is cool. Running ceremonies, being part of a community, being something greater than you, being of service, chopping wood, showing up early, raking the grounds, that you know, writing grants. That's cool. You
I feel like you bring
know.
up a good point because a lot of times with Native people, we don't find the culture
Mm,
until something has incredibly impacted our life,
mm,
whether that be an OD
mm,
or you get arrested or
mm,
you do something that you get severely ill and you find yourself in the ER on your
mm,
deathbed
mm,
and then you survive. And these are the type of things that finally wake us up and realize that we need to go find ceremony
mm,
and we need to connect with our culture because there's something severely missing in our soul that's not giving us that love and connection that we need to make
mm,
us the people
mm,
that we need to be.
mm,
I want to be able to, that's another thing with my podcast is
mm,
to bring that culture into people's lives to make them want to do it without needing to
mm,
hit rock
mm,
bottom.
mm,
Unfortunately, like with me, I had to go through a rock bottom moment before I
mm,
realized I needed to connect with my
mm,
culture. I mean, I did the right things. I went to the Air Force. I started going to college, but
mm,
I ended up getting arrested. I went to jail.
mm,
And then when I found myself in that cell and it's cold and you're hungry and there's no one there for you,
mm,
then that's when I just realized like what I think is cool. I'm trying to connect to this rap hip hop
mm,
culture. I'm trying
mm,
to connect to like what's cool and then you look around you and then you see the people in jail and you're like, this is my future. If
mm,
I continue in this path with this,
mm, mm,
and this isn't what I want to leave behind as a legacy.
mm,
And I feel empty inside at the end of the day because when you are taking a drug or you're being bad in the streets, you don't realize how alone you are or how hurt you
mm,
are until you find yourself staring at a wall and you have nothing but yourself to look into and you realize, dang, I actually I'm empty. I don't have anything. What is this?
mm,
And I don't even have my family that loves me to kind of make me feel that warmth. You
mm,
realize you're cold.
mm,
And I feel like ceremony provides that inner warmth, that fire.
mm. Um, I'm a big history. I'm a big movie guy. I'm a big movie guy. So one of my favorite movies was The Godfather, right? So one of the first scenes of The Godfather, the Undertaker goes up to Don Corleone and then asks him for his favor, and then the elder, the Undertaker, and then he said first he went, you know, his daughter and what have the whole story, and then he went to the court first, the court, and they give him justice, and he's asking Don Corleone for justice, and then the Godfather says, "Why didn't you come to me first? No. Why didn't you believe in me first? You know, now you come to me. Now you want to be close to me. Now you want me want my services. So what did I do to what did I do for you to lose respect for me? No. So in regards to cultural identity, regarding ceremony, regards to that Sundance tree, the fire, this holy medicine. No. So from that perspective, it's like, oh, now you want to be, now you want to, now you want to, now you want my love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still going to give it to you, obviously, because it's who we are. It's in our blood. No, pero ahora, like now, resulta, now you coming around, and then so we have to jumpstart that and say, you know what? Wait a minute. Our ceremony should come first. Boom. No, our traditions should come first. Boom. No, instead of finding love in the streets and doing this, doing that, and other recreational drugs and hip hop and what have you, and say, wait a minute. For me, being of service is, our ceremonies, our culture comes first. You know, so we should never. And then one of my late elders, he has a story. He said, "Peyote, don't never let it go. Don't never let it go." So if you break that into in a very simple form of a banker, like interest, right? Like interest, and the sense of how much. So when you go to a bank, and you ask for a loan, then you can put up your credit, blah blah blah, blah credit, okay, whatever. Sometimes you might get like you might laugh you out of the bank. So, you have a job, you got whatever. He owes a whole bunch of money, so and so and so and so. Then sometimes you might get a good loan, okay. But that's how the ceremonies are. If you go to a ceremony and say, you know what, hey, I want a nice wife, nice husband. I want to be stay focused and go to school. I want to stay focused and be of service. I want to go to the Sundance Tree and pray. I want to, I want all these beautiful things, you know, but I want the energy and the clarity for me to be focused to do this, right? Then, please help me, Creator. Then the Creator's gonna be like, okay, well, wait a minute. You're over here. Where's your credit report? Who are your parents? No. Oh, you're okay. What have you done? How many times have you come up to me and asking for the same loan? So what do you owe the fire? No, no. So for all your trials and tribulations, how serious are you to be granted these prayers? No. So it comes down to very simple math. No. And then sometimes that's a beauty of ceremony, because that's the beauty of putting like the whole like in La Chicano culture, put work in, that. Well, how much work do you put in, in the community? How much wood have you chopped for your elders? How much time have you spent away, doing podcasts and doing this and driving long roads to some ceremonies to be of service when your children are at home and they want their dad, and you have to look at you look at your children's faces and say, which I was that kid of my dad, where I'm like, where's my dad at? He's over there saving the world, being Superman, you know. He's always helping all these people, but I know that my children are looking at me the same way.
Mm-hmm.
No. But where's the line at? And to being of service and ceremonies, whatever ceremony you are, whether it's neighborhood church, whether it's Huachol, whether it's Sundance, whatever it is, that should come first. It shouldn't come second.
Yeah, that's powerful. That is putting something before yourself is hard for a lot of people, and especially when you say in front of your family, that's another hard thing.
Yes,
especially for those of us who have, fiancés, wives, children, because those are important as well. So putting ceremony, I guess that's why it's good to have your family invested in the ceremony as well.
There's a bunch of articles here. One of the messages is that we're all tools, and every tool could be replaced, no matter what medicine man, what activism. We're all tools, and we have to find out what tool are we. That's the message. And those of you who are listening from different communities, everybody could be replaced. We're all the same. We're all related. To our relations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you
Okay.
for allowing me to interview you. I wish we could talk a little bit longer. If you would like, I'd like to interview you again at some time, and we can schedule that. But I appreciate you for allowing me in your home and having this conversation.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hasta la próxima. Dice, so next time.
Next time.
Hasta la próxima.